The podcast that floats down here.
Hi, I'm Melissa, your Stephen King veteran.
Hi, I'm Ben, the Stephen King and horror film fanboy.
And hello, I'm Luke, your first-time Stephen King reader.
And we are really cruising through part 5, The Ritual of Chud now. We are deep into chapter number 19 in The Watches of the Night. We are going to talk today about sections 7 through 9, and that includes the Seminary Grounds, 2:17 a.m., the Barrens, 12:55 p.m., and Henry gets a lift, 2:30 a.m. This section was 17 pages, and that was 1.56% of the entire book. All right, section 7, Seminary Grounds. Melissa, let her rip.
So do you feel like completely not intentional when we split this chapter, but in general, this entire 3-section series is what I'd like to call the story of Henry.
I was thinking Henry Block.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's the story. It's all about him. There's nothing from really anybody else in this section. It's old Harry, young Harry, old Henry, young Henry, old Henry. Let me speak slower.
Well, that certainly sounds like a Dr. Seuss poem about to start. Old Henry, young Henry, old Henry, yes.
Bleeding and broken. Which one? Yes.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. Anyway, section 7, Seminary Grounds. So we find out one of my biggest questions from section 1 was when Mike and Henry were having their little brawl, if you will. Stan's head popped up, literally like on a spring popped up. And Henry kind of lost it, right? Like started screaming, whatever. Well, we find out that he saw Victor's head, which just like to point out that they told us that. I wasn't sure if we would get that or not. So that was nice to find that out.
Yeah, I couldn't remember at the time. So yeah, it is good to call back. Yeah, my first note was a balloon with a smile on his face was tied to the iron bars of the sewer grate, kind of saying, "Hey, Henry, this way." Come here.
Waypointing. It's waypointing.
Exactly. And then in that same kind of page there, the inside of Henry's brain with the pop culture references absolutely reminds me of Richie.
Yes.
It's and there's a line later on of how they say Henry, is in agreement with the losers of rock and roll is the okayest thing, and it's kind of just makes you think that maybe he would have probably fit in had he not been an asshole. He probably, would have been easily accepted into the group being the poor kid, the poor kid with the asshole dad, into the Losers Club itself as his own version of a loser. He just got shifted down a different line.
I think potentially, especially, well, he was older, right? He'd already been held back one time. So every time he talks about the kids and what they're doing down at the Barrens, he always calls it baby stuff. So he always degrades and just puts them down just regardless. But yeah, I mean, if he could have gotten over that and just, been whatever, I think he could have a spot in the Losers Club. I would think they could fit.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and say, when they were talking about that, he uses the term that we heard last section several times as well. That's pretty much okie dokie. It just over and over again, that just rung in my ears, those two sections. Rock and roll is pretty okie dokie. It reminded me very much of Belch, and you take on mannerisms of the people you hang out with, and that's the only person that he would have hung out with in the past whatever number of years, because he stulted.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. Do you think he talked like that in general in his everyday life in Juniper Hill, or do you think he's reverting, as our Losers Club did? The closer he gets to Derry, the more he reverts back to his 12-year-old self.
I think it's a little bit of both, but more so the reverting, which even Mike, when he saw Henry approaching him in the library, could tell that he was physically reverting almost, at least in Mike's perspective. So I think it's probably both, but more so the Derry, the closer you are back to the tunnels, the younger they are to that same age that they were before. Kind of feeling. What do you got here, Melissa?
Well, so I don't have a lot. I'm kind of with Henry on this whole thinking about Mike, right? Because we see the cop and he's like hiding, and then the cop goes one way, and then he sees like the ambulance, and he's like, oh, they're heading to the library where I killed Mike. And then the ambulance goes, it's like, wait a second, why? How would they know? Maybe he got to, but that's fine because he's totally dead. I totally killed him, right? And he's like, well, the ambulance. They wouldn't send an ambulance if he was dead, but he's got to be dead. He's totally dead. I got him like he's dead. I'm kind of with Henry, right? Mike is dead. Is he? Is he not? I don't like the waiting. I'm really bothered by the not knowing how Mike is doing.
Well, in fairness, we do know he did make a call out to the hospital.
We know
But
that, but
Henry
we
doesn't know that.
Yeah, Henry
But
doesn't know that. So, but
we also
still
don't know what happened next, and he could be not okay, and I'm worried about Mike. And it's been a long time since we've seen him because it might have been 3 sections for everybody else, but it's been weeks for me. So.
Right.
Yeah, I got when they were talking about the ambulance, I got a very Sling Blade feel from it. Don't bother about sending the ambulance, might as well send the hearse. I don't think he's gonna make it. I hit him in the head with a lawnmower blade. Like it's like don't worry about sending the ambulance. Go ahead and just send the hearse right away. I reckon he's dead.
So my thought on that one, it's when it's talking about the Fuzzmobile and the bubble lights. I don't, Melissa, you probably remember them. Luke, I don't know if you remember them too much, but those old school 80s style bubble lights, when they start spinning, they have that whirl that you don't even need a siren. That you turn those on and they're and it's a distinct sound. So I love that it's called out with it. That even Henry's like, yeah, you don't even need to put the siren on. Just go. And like I said with the ambulance, he's already dead. It's fine. That's fine. You're not gonna find much. He's dead. I got him.
So Benj, go with your next note there.
Yeah. So I think I had one before this, and it kind of ties into exactly what Melissa was just talking. Actually, I think you have the similar note, Melissa, and I didn't realize it until I looked up. So I'll go to my next one. It's an odd choice for him to reminisce about the exact same scene we just read from Beverly, but in Henry's thought process, we haven't gotten that in this section at all, where they're kind of doubling back almost the entire scene from his point of view. It's a condensed version quite a bit, but it's still, we get the main bullet points. So just interesting for us as on a narrative purpose to get that same callback and same response from his line, his thought process on it.
Is that the next section?
No, that's the end of this section where he starts to think about following her. It's actually he's thinking as an adult. Yeah, it was very odd. Like it was a very odd section. That's why I made a note on it. It was a very odd thing where he's thinking back to when he was a kid, but it's not the next section like we've seen. It's him as an adult thinking back to it, reminiscing about being kicked in the balls and chasing her down, looking for the club and hunting for the treehouse.
It leads into the next section though, right? It's kind of like the very end, and because we've seen that multiple times where like the section leads to the next one, but this one's a weird one because it's from Henry. Like it's like we've seen Bill do that, we've seen Ben do that, but I think it really stands out because it's Henry.
Yes, but I'm also talking with this chapter itself because the way King has been writing all these sections up until this point, he'll say her asshole friends, like in the last section, and like part 7 friends, and it's from her point of view, from Beverly's point of view. This one doesn't do that as much, and so him changing stylistic, writing in the middle of the same chapter, it's an interesting way to go about things.
It stood out to you.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I didn't really think about it. I just was more interested in what the hell Henry's up to. Like, oh man.
I think Henry's kind of worried about that too. Like,
yeah.
What am I doing now? This was almost like a resting section for Henry and a contemplative. And honestly, we all 3 of us have the exact same kind of final thought here. So Luke, I'm going to have you, why don't you go ahead and jump it off, because I think you've got it written out sort of the best here.
Yeah, so Henry kind of talks, he's just looking at the stars, right? And he's just in one of his thoughts, which is he's got plenty.
I was going to say we've only got a couple. No,
very much like Benji said, like Richie, kind of ping pongs and pinballs around in his head. And he starts looking up at the stars, and he goes, he says that he knew that it came from outer space. It came from the void between the stars, which I think is a really neat idea of, it's not just a bunch of lights that are sitting up there. There's something in between, and that darkness, that depth of nothingness is where it is coming from. And there's a lot of ways you can spin it, but that's kind of how I took it. I thought it was a really interesting way to say, reminisce back to the Smoke Hole chapter, where we saw that happen with Mike and with Richie. So somehow Henry has figured this out as well.
Yeah, came from outer space with a lust for Earth women, come to rob all the women and rape all the men. Say, Frank, don't you...
Oh no. Couldn't start a call. Come on. Why would it do that? At least it's still recording. No idea why my computer just kicked me out of the call, but it's still recording, so give me 1 second.
How many times do we have to do this tonight?
0.
Okay.
Almost ready. Benji, you were reading your quote. If you could just read that one more time.
I'll start it over, yeah.
Stupid.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, we'll just live with the green line. Anyway, go ahead.
Came from outer space with a lust for Earth women, came to rob all the women and rape all the men. Say, Frank, don't you mean rob all the men and rape all the women? Who threatened this show? Silly man. You were Jesse. Richard used to tell that one, and that was pretty much. That kind of ties into the came from the spaces between the stars. That's where Henry kind of remembers that, and it kind of kicks off into what you were talking about there, Luke, of how he knew, it came from outer space, because to him, it's been the voice in the moon. You know, it's the man in the moon kind of thing, and so he's always known it to be an extra,
that's true, yeah.
An extra Earth creature from that aspect. In his mind, I would put it that way.
Yeah, that's I hadn't really thought about it in that connection there, so good stuff. Anything else on Section 7? Let's roll right into more Henry time with Section number 8. The Barrens, 12:55 p.m. This is where we kind of see a bit more of the same scene we saw earlier, right? This is from Henry's perspective, and most of this is just down in the Barrens, right? Benj, take it away.
You're bleeding. And Henry looked down, saw a dark spot about the size of a quarter on his crotch and his jeans. So for him to be bleeding from a nut shot, that's a pretty damn solid kick.
That got me in the gut earlier. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with him?
I was fine.
Good.
I thought it was fine. I had no problem with that at all.
I was driving and I heard that. I was like, oh God. Oh no. What's wrong with him?
And the underwear getting tight because it's swelling. And it's just like, damn, Ben got him good, but Bev, as I said, a couple chapters ago or a couple sections ago, he must have like now as an adult, just like super calloused balls. Just from those couple shots and whatever else he went through.
Well, I think in one of the previous chapters where we were in his head and he was thinking about Bev and she was tormenting him in whatever the memory thing was, or like the vision about how he would never have kids. And I think it probably is referencing back to these things, and maybe there's more to come, I guess. But poor choice of words, maybe. But Melissa, what were your main takeaways of this section?
I have been waiting for this section for months and months and months and months, which is odd and something that most of you probably wouldn't realize why. We knew a long time ago that Henry was convicted of murdering everyone, right? And there was a whole bunch rolled in there. It was Victor and Belch. Oh, yeah, I did that. Yeah, my dad. Yeah, that kid. Yeah, sure, I did that kid too. Like, he just sort of takes the blanket blame because somebody had to, and he knows that if he doesn't, then Pennywise will get him. That was mentioned pages ago, but in art, years ago for us. Whatever. He really killed his dad.
Mm-hmm.
He really super killed his dad. He extra killed him. It was beautiful. And for killing, if you can think of killing as beautiful. I have been waiting for Luke to get to the scene. So Luke, tell me what you think about how and why Henry killed his dad on the same morning that all of this is going down. And we've seen Henry for, now more than half a chapter on this day. It hasn't been mentioned that all of these things are happening on the same day he already killed his dad.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Thoughts?
Yeah, that one, whenever we first talked about it, I was convinced that, he actually killed him, especially because the way it's written, he was like, yeah, I did do that. And then the other ones, it was more like, I might as well have just said, okay. Like, at that point, whatever, screw it.
Right.
He just was like, yeah, I probably, fine. Like, and he had a certain amount of guilt, which, again, we haven't seen the scene, but we keep hearing about it, of the guilt that he has for Belch and Victor. I can see why he would just be like, yeah, I as good as killed them. But then I think Patrick Hoxstar is another one, and the girl Veronica
Rogan, maybe.
Either way,
I think
how
Veronica is the first name.
how her underwear ended up in his room, and she was dead, and so it was like yeah, whatever. Like at that point, I what's it matter?
Right.
So like him killing his dad, I think it's been told to us so blatantly that I was like, yeah, I bet, yeah, I was ready for it. But it is surprising that it's the same morning, and he is.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know if it is really surprising because we know that there is this is the same morning that he was out with the moon in his underwear
Yep.
in his front
Mhm.
yard as well. So
Yep.
I mean, he is fully Pennywise, switched on, and other people are seeing that too, and so it just felt natural to me, I guess, is my overall feeling. It's like, yep, we're pretty much like the day of is the feeling I get of when they're going down into the tunnels and into the Morlock holes or whatever that we keep hearing about. And
We're still not there.
they're close. I have a very strong feeling they're about to be there. But
And now remember, this is also the same day that Almarsh got turned to 11. So Pennywise, as a whole, is just going full bore with every trick bag
mhm.
he has.
Well, it's got to build up to that end of the summer extravaganza in Derry, and we're getting close because we're pretty late in August right now.
Yeah.
August 25th? Is that right?
I think so.
I don't know. I
Something
don't
like
remember
that.
the date.
They used to tell us what day it was.
Yeah.
Um,
Kind of going along with Melissa's thought there of the killing of the dad. I have one note before that, but I'll jump back to that. But Bob Gray gifting the disadvantaged boy with a special package. See, Pennywise can be good. He gives to charity. He's a disadvantaged poor kid. Give him a free prize. From the carnival. But no. But
Useful tool.
a useful tool. He can whittle with it. He can do crafts. And that right there, kids, is why switchblades like that are not allowed. You cannot have a projectile to where literally you put it up against someone's flesh, hit a button, and they're dead. So anybody that says, why can't we have switchblade? Do have them in the movies? That's why. Highly dangerous, highly deadly. If you want one, just jump off a bridge. No. Anyway. So, Luke, did you have anything else before
no,
this,
go for it. Go for it.
Okay, sorry. Just a couple things. So I have a line, wait. The voice drifted up from the blackness inside, and Henry felt his interior temperature plummet to zero, his veins and arteries freezing into crystal tubes of ice. But with these sensations came an almost unknown feeling, love. His eyes, a widened, clownish smile spread his lips in a large, nevertheless arc. It was the voice from the moon. Now it was down in the pumping station, down in the drains. Wait, watch. And so it's giving him direction, just like it did with the moon of, he knew, like he said, he has to listen to it. This is his guiding force. This is the one that, needed to, be listened to. And then it goes on, they waited and watched. Belch and Victor seemed to have gone to sleep with their eyes open, almost as if in a trance, or not under their own, and this is my own line, almost as if not under their own full control, their autopilot almost, as Melissa had brought up earlier of, last section or last part with the Belch and the other gentleman watching Beverly. It's this whole Derry mindset of just autopilot and just continuing on. So, and then the last thing I had was Belch was kind of impressed with Bren's work. He's like, "Oh, standing right there. Oh, I was right on top of it."
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
I am really comfortable with Henry watching Ben and Bev come out of there. That was a little creepy. His voyeur, we're just gonna watch them, and the fact that he saw them and didn't go after them immediately, that making me a little creeped out and worried about them. I mean, obviously we should be worried.
It was certainly much more sinister, the fact that he actually deliberated about it, as opposed to just being the bulldog, seeing, smelling blood and going for it. He's actually plotting now, which is it's always a little more terrifying, right?
Yes.
Benj, the one distinction I want to make on what you had said, I don't feel like the guy that saw Bev getting chased by Henry is on autopilot. I feel like there's a difference between the trance that Victor and Belch are in compared to what, the social neglect, the social apathy thing. This is just Derry. That's normal. I don't feel like they are being influenced by Pennywise specifically in that moment, other than the creation that Pennywise has done with making dairy what it is, I guess.
That's fair. No, that's completely fair. I was kind of tying it with what we were saying earlier about the blank stare kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what you're saying. I do agree with you on that.
Any final thoughts on Section 8? Section 9 it is then. Henry gets a lift, 2:30 a.m. This is another Goofy in Henry's Head chapter. We are back in 1985, and who wants it? There's something.
I want to know how Henry's not dead yet, because dude, he's losing blood like crazy. He's passing out. He's zoning out. Like, just die already. Okay, that's all.
But I saw Melissa's note, and honestly, if you get, he got a belly stab, so it's possible he didn't get any organs or arteries, because there's no major arteries down in that area. They're like prominent, so it's possible you get a belly stab. You could keep going for a while. I mean, he's covered in blood. Covered, but but at the same time, you only need really 2 pints of blood to keep living on. You have about 4 to 5 in your system at any time, so
7 to 8. But yeah,
okay, yeah, sorry, that's right. Yeah,
but I mean, we saw.
I've watched a lot of
Stark
Grey's
do it.
Anatomy lately.
We saw Arya Stark do it in Bravos. She was fine. Just
right.
Yeah, just go find Lady Crane. That's what he's doing. He's going to look for Lady Crane. Anyway, so he gets a ride, right? And I guess he hears this kind of in his head from Pennywise of I got you a lift, and we find out that this car that his dad used to want, and he was like, oh, the car that I want to be buried, I want to drive before I get killed or before I die or whatever. It happens to be that car. Perfect timing. And this is where I kind of mentioned last section, I thought that we were going to see Tom Rogan. Is where I was really thinking it was, instead of being Belch and Pennywise, basically reincarnated zombie body, whatever this is, total premonition. Like, it might not be there at all. It might be true, just illusion, and it all just happens. But I really thought it was going to be Tom Rogan pulling up in this car, just being like, hey, bud, need a ride? And then they both get to the hotel. But I thought for sure Tom Rogan.
Yeah, I did have the same thought, but then I thought about it too, Luke, because when you brought that up, I'm like, oh, he's going to make this connection. And I thought that too. But then I thought about it, and Beverly, or back in Tom's chapter, he's at the hotel with Audra, or right across the hotel. And this is the same day.
Right. This is also way late at night, though. He easily could have woken up from the house. That's where I was like, he could easily just be driving around town right now, like doing God knows what.
Yeah, my comment was more of, think about how long ago the Beverly or the Tom and Audra and everything, it's still the same day.
Yeah, no, it's been since like it's been at least 10 or 12 chapters.
Yeah, talk about the long night. This is the true long night.
I don't know, I'm flipping.
So when he got, while you're flipping, Melissa, when Henry got up to the car and opened the door before he saw his Belch, he was terrified to the thought, I don't want to see my dad. I really don't want. And so when we were talking about the Victor's head being on the spring to freak him out, I honestly thought, he had seen his dad's head when we were talking about it. I couldn't remember because, he's still, even though he killed his dad, in cold blood, he's still terrified of the guy.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if he knows that Pennywise can kind of do whatever he wants with the dead, at least from what we've seen. He brought Victor back to him, and he's seen all sorts of things. And seeing his dad after his dad knew that he was the one that specifically killed him would be much more terrifying than this guilt-driven thing that was Belch, like the reason that he's there or whatever. So, what do you got there, Melissa?
We're on chapter 19 still, right?
Yeah, and it was chapter 10 was the reunion started.
12. The Audra and Tom Rogan chapter was chapter 12, which was only 6 chapters ago. But we split that one up also, so it's been decades.
Even chapter 10 was the reunion, and that was this same day too. That was this morning.
And then the walking tours?
And then yeah.
It's a very busy day.
The last time they slept was when Bill wakes up to go to the reunion.
Before he's the religious cab driver.
Excuse my French if you're a religious man.
Dave.
I'm not, so go to fucking church.
He's way more talkative than Belch driving.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of Belch driving and the ride to the hotel? Anything really jump out at you other than the bottle of wine hooch in the glove compartment?
I think it's interesting that Mike got into Henry's head so much that the version that Henry had been telling himself of Belch saved me, and Mike was able to just get him to switch his thinking enough to you abandoned Belch. that he feels the need to address it to dead zombie Belch
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't know how to address it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. But my biggest takeaway, and I know I said this before, is why shouldn't Henry have run? I absolutely, under no circumstances, have a problem with the fact, especially because we kind of get to see the scene of the death of Belch and Victor from the future past. We still haven't seen how they got there, but we see their deaths, right? Like we're given that little bit.
Description of it, yeah.
Yes, and I think it's interesting. There's no way Henry would have survived if he had stayed to help Belch, and there's no way Belch would have survived if Henry had tried to fight. It just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly the survivor's guilt, and yeah, there would have been no difference other than more death if if Henry would have made a different choice. Like that's the
Right.
only change in outcome, is Henry would also be dead.
Yeah, because
Which-
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, basically, Victor. Yeah, Henry sees Victor get his head ripped off, just straight up chopped off, ripped, clean, decapitated, and then he sees Belch step up to him and get his face peeled right off, half of his face peeled right off his head down to the skull, because Belch is too dumb to know to run. That's the thing. And so Henry at least has the wherewithal and the common sense. Get the fuck out of there. And so it's not, Henry being, selfish or anything like that. It's, I'm gonna live. Sorry. It's,
Mm-hmm.
if I could do something, I would, but there's nothing can be done. So yeah, get out. So yeah, I have, as Melissa said, I have no issues with Henry, but I do like Mike using that to get in Henry's head at least a little bit.
Absolutely. I'm surprised that it's taken that much of a hold that quickly. Like, it's clearly like a bombshell almost for him. Like, he never had that thought process before, is what it seems like. On that same thing, and I'm sure we'll have the discussion again when we actually see the scene down in the tunnels where Victor and Belch get killed. But I don't know if I mentioned this last time, and again, sorry for another Game of Thrones reference, but it reminds me a lot of Theon and Yara and Euron when... Spoilers, Euron captures Yara, and Theon has to make the decision to either try to go save her, where Euron's literally got an axe to her throat, or just run. And what good would come if he does anything other than run? They both end up captured or dead. Or,
Right.
in this case, they both survive because he does do the flee, because, it's better to have her be a captive than both of us dead. So I get a very similar feeling in there. I don't blame Henry for the choice that he made.
So Luke, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think this is our Team Rocket line. Run away to live again to fight another day.
Yep, sure is. Team Rocket, blast
Team
off
Rocket,
the speed
go.
of light.
That's it.
All right, Melissa, what else do you have on this section?
All right, so I just have one more kind of little itty bitty thought here. I think it's really interesting that Henry still reads the Dairy News every day, that he
Yes.
religiously gets that delivered. Isn't that weird? Because other than Mike, out of all of our main characters
Mhm.
that I'm sort of including Henry in,
At this
he's
point,
the only one who really even remembers Dairy and has kept up with it. So it's just curious to me that he's almost as knowledgeable as Mike is, because he remembered Pennywise. He needed the nightlight. He knew about the terrors. He didn't go through that forgetting piece.
Yeah, and it's because kind of harkening back to a thought I had, because I've seen your note, Melissa, too. We're seeing bits and pieces of a lot of the losers themselves. Like I said, in Henry, we get the pop culture stuff like Richie. We get the newspaper like Mike. We get the scaredness, the timidness like Eddie, like using the nightlight instead of the medicine. But I could kind of make a slight tie into that. I can't remember if he has any kind of ego or secrecies or whatever, idiosyncrasies. But
Idiosyncrasies.
thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay, I got you. It took me a minute, but I got you. It's fine.
I can't remember if they mentioned like if he had anything like that, like cleanliness wise. I don't think so. Like in the once he made it to the hospital, but in his adulthood, we're seeing bits and pieces of the losers kind of coming out in his mentality.
Yeah, I think so. Got anything else there, Benj?
Yeah, I got two more notes. I find it interesting that they were all at the townhouse. It really makes less sense to me why they just didn't head back from the library as a group. I know Bill and Bev wanted their own alone time, but still, it's like, you're all in the same damn hotel. Go back together.
Or have the big meeting at the hotel, and then only Mike has to go home. Come on. Hotel party. Get drunk there.
Yeah, hotel bar. There's plenty of booze there. Don't have to bring your own. But my last note is, as I kind of mentioned in the previous section with the Bill and Bev part, the failures of the Derry Townhouse front desk would earn them a fairly negative Yelp review so far. They had important information they missed giving Bev because he just sat there watching TV, and then they didn't see the guy walking through the lobby covered in blood. Any decent front desk hotelsman would probably say, hey, hold up for a second. But no, not in Derry. So Derry Townhouse, 1.5 stars.
It sounded like when Henry gets there, no one was at the front desk. Like he found it. He just walked in, luckily at a time where they were in the back room or whatever. And I've seen that. So and I'm sure Pennywise influenced to make that happen. But at least it wasn't like blatantly like, oh, look at that guy. Well, that's weird.
True. Well,
Which
we already
in
know he was
Derry
in the back,
wouldn't have been any
watching
different.
TV.
So.
Yeah, we already knew he was watching TV because when Bill and Bev walked in, they said, the TV watching front desk men, whatever. So it's just okay. Yeah, just look up. Okay, see if you recognize them. If you don't, make note of it at least.
So then he does go up the elevator and makes his way over to Mr. Kasprack's room, knocks on the door, acts like the bellhop, and says that your wife called and left you a message. And Eddie's like, oh, Myra? Like, just giving him more fuel or whatever. And Henry, pretty smart, was like, oh, doesn't have her name. It just says your wife. I thought that was kind of silly. But it sounds like we get cut off right when Eddie seems to be opening the door. We hear the mechanical lock. We hear the chain on the door as well. Does not bode well for Mr. Kasprack right now. But we'll discuss that another day. So, you guys have any questions for the new reader? Melissa has a question.
Melissa does. Henry, when he's arriving at the Derry townhome, really only has what does he say? Let me find it. He said he stood there looking at the 8th floor brick building, which, along with the library and the Aladdin Theater and the seminary, were one of the few that he remembered clearly from the old days. So those were like the 4 buildings that really made an imprint in his mind. And I wondered if that's just because that's how memory works and you just have certain things that stick out, or is it about Pennywise's power? Does Pennywise have more power in certain areas around Derry, or does his power sort of distribute equally? Pennywise had the list of all the names, and Pennywise is able to change the statue into big creepy Paul Bunyan stalkers, and Pennywise can make heads pop up in the middle of the library, and Pennywise can do a lot of things. But can he only do those things in certain seats of power, or can he do them throughout Derry?
Well, I feel like he probably could do more. I think he could have fairly decently blanket power, but I think he's a bit of a romantic, Pennywise himself, and he likes these points of power in the town, like these landmark type things, because they garner the public eye and they gain attention, which only feeds him. And so I think there are certain areas. Kitchener Ironworks was a big deal. It was a big place. There was a lot of people there. The Aladdin we always hear about. We haven't really been there or anything. I guess that was where they went to the movies early on, right? So it's a well-known establishment. It's, kind of one of those, when you look at Derry, these are the things you see. And so I think those type landmark things, and the Paul Bunyan statue have a bit more receptivity to being Pennywised, at least influenced. But I think he could spread that out more if he really wanted to.
It just maybe has to put the effort in, whereas these are more conductors.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bear trap covered in honey, as opposed to mini bear traps all over the place.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that you could make a call for that, though.
No, that answers my question. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
And the fact that they always talk about these landmarks, I mean, they've been mentioned over and over and over. And yeah, it's a small town, especially when the kids are young, so they stand out more then. But like now we know this is a bit of more of an urban sprawled area. And from Henry's perspective, yeah, those would be the things that he recognizes because they are still there. Where the bank mall, that's not very interesting for him. He's a nostalgia man. So.
And then also on top of it, like just talking about landmark, but this chapter is the first time we've heard about the seminary, correct?
No,
from Beverly, we heard with Beverly. I'm saying in this chapter.
Yes, this chapter.
Beverly was the first time we heard
This
about
chapter,
the seminary, kind of thing. So
I think so, yeah.
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 So I mean, I don't know if the seminary would be one. I think the seminary's always been like for seminary. I don't think that's a Pennywise place. I think that's a safe haven place because that's always a safe place to go because it's a seminary. You have the religious folks. If you're in danger, what is it? Sanctuary.
Sanctuary.
You can call it sanctuary. And now with Henry, since he reads the Daily News, he knew the seminary was closed, so it was a safe place to go and hide. So it in that aspect, I don't know if Pennywise has any real power on that one because I don't think it's too much of a landmark. But the Aladdin, the Paul Bunyan, other places you mentioned, absolutely. Kitchener. I think he does, as Luke said, is romantic and likes the stuff. But as long as he has access to the place by the water or the sewers, he, has the power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't really have much for questions from the new reader. We just have a couple big cliffhangers, and it looks like shit's going down. I mean, it really is not. It's looking like this. We're finally getting to the true action, and if it goes more and more sections without it, I'm going to say I'm a little frustrated with it. Just constantly being teased and teased and teased and teased. Like the tension's built. Like just let it go now. Just let it go. Don't sing. Don't sing. No, stop it.
My song was better.
Your song was better.
Yeah.
So
mine was higher ranked.
let's talk about our favorite things. Melissa, what was your favorite thing?
Oh, Pennywise's power in Derry never ceases to stop shocking and frightening me. I love to be absolutely appalled by him. And how did he get the room numbers?
Mm-hmm.
I want to know the backstory of how did Belch get the car, and how did he get Belch, and then how did he get the room numbers? And I don't want to know because it's scary, but I want to know because, man, Pennywise got some strings he can pull.
Now, it didn't say Belch had grown up at all, right? It just looks like that was just his corpse.
Right.
Somewhat preserved, but...
But the car and the list and the hat which sat there,
What you don't know is Pennywise has a little cat friend that can go around and snake different information for him, like a list of room numbers.
Or is it like in 1958 when we saw all of the people being kind of glassy-eyed and just not paying attention? Is it that same kind of thing? Did he get, just like he got into Al Marsh's head, did he get into the desk clerk's head and get him to pass over this list of names? And is that the reason why there was no desk clerk there?
So
the little strings.
I was thinking even more along the lines of the Mrs. Kirsch section earlier on, where Bev questioned, did any of that even happen? Did I even go in there? Because Pennywise can kind of just put you in autopilot mode and make you see whatever. So it makes me think there was no Belch, there was no car. Pennywise got Henry's head and transported him there by him walking there, but making this whole scene up in Henry's head as it was going, and he just, of course, has
was there.
Well, either way, I think you could we have no proof that any of this is happening, but what does it make it not real if it's just because it's happening in your head? Anyway.
Well, mine is more I've read enough King. Typically, this crazy supernatural stuff, it's real. It's not a twisting your brain thing. It's this is actually happening. So that's just my perspective. Yeah. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm just saying that's why I tend to think, no, it actually happened.
Yeah, no, No, I think that's entirely fair, and it's a good question. How the hell is he so powerful? Like, it's a totally reasonable question. My favorite thing was the morning that Henry gets his knife. He walks up to the post box and sees the balloons with the kids' heads on them, and he just thinks about them popping, and they do, and he felt really good about that. And I just thought it was a neat little that whole interaction with him getting the knife and then killing his dad. I don't know. It certainly stood out to me. And it was a pretty good scene. Bench?
All right.
I liked the insight into the de-evolution, I'll put it, of Henry's mental state in 58 and today. Basically, we get, as we said, the full story of what, of his craziness, at least in this day in 58, of kind of how it started off. Because, we got the first backstory. I forgot about that in the Beverly part where he was just sitting in his underwear yelling at the moon or listening to the moon kind of thing. But, we get the continuation of that, and kind of we get more insight into it of the moon is talking to him, and now he's hearing the same voice of that telling him, and it's the one slowing him down, as we had said, of instead of him being the pit bull just charging right at it, he's like, no, wait, watch. And it's an interesting look into that psyche.
So, this has been the podcast that floats down here. You can interact with us on Twitter and socials like Instagram as well, at floatsdownhere. Send us a digital balloon to floatsdownhere@gmail.com. Check out this show and all the shows at thepodcastthat.com, including the podcast that fights in F words, which is an Outlander podcast with our sister Abby, her husband Joe, and our good friend of the show, Bailey Riddle. So check that out. It goes through books and show. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of funny. Check it out. Subscribe, like, rate, and leave comments on iTunes. We love hearing from you guys, and those reviews go a long way to helping other people find our show, as well as on YouTube. Feel free to share our show anywhere you like.
This show and all of our shows at thepodcastthat.com are produced with the love and support of our wonderful Imaginary Legion patrons. Learn more about our reward tiers at patreon.com/stayimaginary.
You will hear from us again in 2 more weeks, where we will finish chapter 19?
Finish.
We're going to finish chapter 19.
Okay, chapter 19.
We're going to finish chapter 19, which is called In the Watches of the Night. We're going to talk about sections 10, The Losers All Together, 1:20 p.m., section 11, Eddie's Room, 3:05 a.m., and section 12, The Barrens, 1:55 p.m.
You'll float too.
Stay imaginary.
Thanks.